I'm sorry, ma'am, but you can't enter here right now. We're investigating a situation inside.
Aisha Brown tightened her grip on her tote bag. You. Stop right there. She froze. The officer stepped out slowly, boots heavy, hand resting near his belt. He looked her up and down, slow, deliberate, like he was inventorying a problem. I asked you to stop, he said. I work here, Aisha replied. Her voice stayed even. I'm late for my shift. Uh-huh. He glanced at the badge hanging from her neck, but didn't lean close enough to read it. And you're parked where? In the staff lot. Level 2. He smiled, thin and sharp. That lot's been hit with break-ins. A nurse across the walkway slowed, pretending to check her phone. The officer took one step closer. Too close. Mind telling me why you're nervous? I'm not. You keep answering fast, he said. That's a sign. Aisha felt the familiar pressure rise in her chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something colder. I need to go inside, she said. He blocked her path with one arm. Not yet. She looked past him, at the glowing hospital sign, at the place where she had spent 12 years of her life protecting rules, people, systems. The officer leaned in and lowered his voice. People who have nothing to hide, he said. Don't rush away from the police. Aisha met his eyes. Then his radio crackled. And everything shifted. Cliffhanger. The officer did not move. Aisha stood under the hospital lights, badge resting against her chest, the night air cold on her skin. I need to get inside, she said again. Not yet, the officer replied. His voice was calm. Too calm. He glanced at the doors, then back at her. You nervous about something? No. You sure? He tilted his head. Because you keep shifting. Aisha forced her feet still. I've worked 12 hours before, she said. I'm tired. That's all. 12 hours where? At this hospital. He chuckled once. Funny. You don't look like security. I'm not. So what are you? A pause. A nurse. He nodded slowly, like he was humoring a child. And you expect me to believe that? Aisha felt heat rise behind her eyes. She pushed it down. My badge is right here. He finally leaned closer, squinting at it, then straightened again. Badges can be fake. Behind them, the automatic doors opened. A man in scrubs walked out, glanced at the scene, then kept going. You're blocking the entrance, Aisha said. That's not your concern. It is when I can't get to my job. The officer's jaw tightened. What's your tone? My tone is calm. You're getting defensive. I'm answering your questions. He stepped closer again. I decide when this is over. Aisha swallowed. A nurse across the walkway stopped pretending to text. Another slowed near the doors. Eyes were on them now. The officer noticed. He straightened, voice louder. I'm going to need to see some ID. I already showed you my badge. I said ID. She hesitated. Not long. Just enough. His eyes narrowed. There it is, he said. The delay. I'm not refusing, Aisha said. I just don't understand why. Because I asked. That's not a reason. His hand moved closer to his belt. You want to make this difficult. Aisha felt her heartbeat in her ears. She thought of her patients. Of policies. Of how power worked when no one questioned it. She reached into her bag. The officer watched every move. Slowly, she pulled out her wallet. Before she could open it, he raised his hand. Stop. She froze. What? Step back, he said. Hands where I can see them. Her breath caught. I'm doing what you asked. Do it slower. People were fully watching now. Aisha lowered her bag to the ground. This is unnecessary, she said quietly. That's not your call. The officer shifted his stance, feet wide, body blocking the doors completely. You can go inside, he said, after I'm satisfied. And if you're not? His smile returned. Then you're late for work. Aisha met his eyes. And for the first time, she understood. This was not about parking. This was about control. Then his radio crackled again. He looked down. And his expression changed. Cliffhanger. The radio hissed. The officer looked down at it, then back at Aisha. For half a second, his confidence slipped. Then it snapped back into place. Dispatch just reminded me, he said, tapping the radio, that we've had complaints in this area. Aisha kept her hands visible. What kind of complaints? Suspicious activity. A nurse near the doors whispered something to another. They both went quiet when the officer glanced their way. That could mean anything, Aisha said. Exactly, he replied. Which is why I'm here. She took a slow breath. I've given you my badge. I'm giving you my ID. What else do you need? He didn't answer right away. He walked a slow circle around her, boots scraping the concrete. You live around here? He asked. No. So you drove in? Yes. Alone? Yes. At night? Yes. He stopped in front of her again. You see the pattern? Aisha shook her head. I see a lot of questions that don't go anywhere. His mouth tightened. You don't get to decide that, he said. Procedure exists for a reason. Procedure also has limits. The word hung between them. The officer stepped closer. You trained in law now? I work in healthcare. That's not the same. No, Aisha said. But it teaches you how power hurts people when it's careless. A few heads turned sharply. The officer raised his voice. I'm conducting an investigation. Into what? He smiled again. If you were innocent, you wouldn't keep asking. That's not true. That's experience talking. She felt the pressure build. The way it always did. The unspoken threat. Comply or escalate. I need to go inside, she said. Patients are waiting. He looked past her, at the glowing lobby. They'll survive. Something in her chest twisted. You don't know that. He shrugged. Not my problem. The doors slid open again. A security guard stepped out, paused, uncertain. Everything okay, officer? The guard asked. The officer didn't look at him. All good. The guard hesitated, then nodded and stepped back inside. Aisha felt the weight of that silence. You see, the officer said quietly. Everyone understands their role. She met his eyes. I understand mine. He laughed, short and sharp. No, you don't. She opened her wallet carefully and held out her driver's license. He took it, studied it longer than necessary. Aisha Brown, he read aloud. Nurse. He looked up. You married? That's not relevant. He smirked. Just making conversation. You're holding my ID, she said. Am I being detained? The question changed the air. The officer's jaw flexed. You're being delayed. For what reason? Officer safety. I'm unarmed. I don't know that. She gestured to her scrubs. You can see everything I have. That doesn't mean anything. The crowd was thicker now. Phones were out, not fully raised, but ready. The officer noticed. His voice lowered. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm standing here, Aisha said. I'm cooperating. You're questioning. Because you're wrong. His eyes hardened. Last warning, he said. If you keep resisting, this goes another direction. Her heart pounded. Not fast. Heavy. Resisting what? She asked. Standing. He stepped even closer. You want to find out. Aisha felt the fear then. Real fear. The kind that lived in the body, not the mind. She thought of the ethics reports she had read. The patterns. The language. The outcomes. She thought of how often silence protected the wrong person. I want your supervisor, she said. The officer froze. What? I'm requesting a supervisor. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The officer stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. You don't get to make demands. I do, she said. And I am. His hand tightened around her ID. You think that's smart? I think it's necessary. He leaned in, voice low, dangerous. You're about to regret this. Aisha didn't look away. Then call him, she said. The officer reached for his radio. And hesitated. Cliffhanger. The officer's thumb hovered over the radio. For a moment, no one breathed. Aisha stood still, hands open at her sides. She could feel the eyes on her now. Not curious. Not neutral. Watching. Waiting. You don't want to do this, the officer said quietly. I already am, she replied. He exhaled through his nose, then turned slightly away, pressing the radio clip to his shoulder. Dispatch, he said. I need a supervisor at Memorial. Possible non-compliant subject. The word landed hard. Non-compliant. Aisha felt it ripple through the small crowd like a spark. A woman near the doors whispered. She's just standing there. Another voice, lower. Why's he talking like that? The officer finished the call and turned back to Aisha, eyes sharp. You could have gone inside by now, he said. This is on you. I didn't make this public, she said. You did. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think these people matter? Aisha didn't answer. She looked instead at the nurse closest to her. Young. Nervous. Watching with wide eyes. You okay? The nurse asked softly. Before Aisha could respond, the officer snapped. Step back. The nurse flinched and obeyed. Silence followed. Thick and uncomfortable. Aisha felt the familiar weight settle in her chest. The pressure to shrink. To smooth things over. To make him comfortable again. She didn't. How long will the supervisor take? She asked. Depends, he said. Could be a while. I have patience. He shrugged. Then you should have cooperated. I did cooperate. You challenged me. That's not a crime. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. It is when I say it is. A man in a janitor's uniform cleared his throat nearby. Officer, he said carefully, she works here. I see her every night. The officer turned on him fast. You involved in this? The man's shoulders dropped. No, sir. Then move along. The man hesitated, looked at Aisha, then walked away. Aisha felt the sting of it. Not anger. Something sadder. The officer noticed her face. That's how this goes, he said. People don't want trouble. Some people don't have a choice, Aisha replied. He scoffed. You always this dramatic. She met his eyes. You always this careless. A phone lifted slightly from the crowd. Another followed. The officer saw. Recording me? He asked loudly. No one answered. That's fine, he continued. Everything I'm doing is by the book. Aisha thought of how often those words were used. Like armor. Like permission. What book? She asked. The one you clearly haven't read. She felt the urge to laugh. It stayed stuck in her throat. The automatic doors opened again. A doctor stepped out, stopped short. What's going on? He asked. Police business, the officer said. The doctor frowned. She's one of ours. That's so, the officer replied. Then she should know better. The doctor hesitated. Looked at the badge on Aisha's chest. Recognition flickered. She's senior staff, he said slowly. The officer's eyes narrowed. That right? Yes. A shift passed through the air. Small, but real. The officer straightened. That doesn't change anything. It might, the doctor said. If you're delaying patient care. The officer's jaw tightened. You threatening me? No, the doctor said. I'm stating a fact. Aisha felt something open in her chest. Not relief. Possibility. Red and blue lights flashed at the edge of the parking lot. Another car was pulling in. The officer glanced toward it, then back at Aisha. His voice dropped. You should have stayed quiet. She held his gaze. You should have listened, she said. The second car stopped. A door opened, and footsteps approached. Cliffhanger. The footsteps were steady. Measured. Aisha didn't turn. She didn't need to. She felt the shift before she saw it, the way authority rearranged the air when it entered. Officer Reed. The voice was older. Controlled. The first officer straightened instantly. Sergeant. A man stepped into view. Gray at the temples. Calm eyes. No rush in his movements. He took in the scene in seconds. The crowd, the phones, Aisha standing still under the lights. What do we have? The sergeant asked. Suspicious individual, Reed said quickly. Refused to cooperate. Aisha felt the word hit her again. Suspicious. Like a stain. The sergeant looked at her. Not her clothes. Her face. He said. Is that accurate? Aisha met his gaze. I showed my badge. I offered my ID. I asked to go to work. The sergeant nodded slowly. And that wasn't allowed. Reed cut in. She kept questioning procedure. The sergeant raised a hand. Reed stopped. What procedure? The sergeant asked. Reed hesitated. Just a beat too long. Routine stop, he said. At a hospital entrance, the sergeant replied. Yes, sir. For a uniformed nurse. Yes, sir. The sergeant turned back to Aisha. How long have you been standing here? Aisha checked the clock above the doors. 17 minutes. A murmur rippled through the crowd. That's excessive, the sergeant said. Reed's jaw tightened. I was ensuring safety. Whose? The sergeant asked. Reed didn't answer. The sergeant exhaled. May I see your ID? Aisha handed it over. He glanced at it once. Handed it back immediately. Thank you. Reed stared. You didn't run it. No need, the sergeant said. Reed's face flushed. Sir, with respect. Enough, the the sergeant said quietly. The word carried weight. Aisha felt her shoulders loosen for the first time. You're free to go, the sergeant told her. Reed's head snapped around. Sir? She's late for work. Aisha nodded. Yes. The sergeant stepped aside, clearing the entrance. Aisha took one step forward. Then she stopped. There's something else, she said. Both officers looked at her. The crowd leaned in. The sergeant's brow creased. Go on. Aisha reached into her tote bag. Slowly, deliberately. Reed stiffened. Hey. It's fine, the sergeant said. Aisha pulled out her phone. I'm not just a nurse, she said. Reed scoffed. Here we go. Aisha tapped the screen. Her hands were steady now. I'm the chair of the hospital's ethics review board, she said. I oversee compliance, patient rights, and staff conduct, including interactions with law enforcement. The words settled slowly. Like snow. The sergeant's eyes widened slightly. Reed laughed. Too loud. Too fast. That's supposed to scare me. No, Aisha said. It's supposed to explain why this matters. She turned the phone so the sergeant could see. Her profile. Her title. Her name. The sergeant read it twice. Then he looked at Reed. You didn't mention that, he said. I didn't know, Reed snapped. You didn't ask, Aisha said. Silence fell. Phones were fully raised now. The sergeant cleared his throat. Are you saying this interaction will be reviewed? Yes, Aisha replied. By policy. Reed stepped forward. This is retaliation. It's accountability, she said. You targeted me. You stopped me. The sergeant held up a hand. Officer Reed. Reed turned. Sir, she's abusing her position. The sergeant's voice stayed calm. No, she's documenting an incident. Reed's face hardened. I followed procedure. Then you have nothing to worry about, Aisha said. The words landed harder than any threat. The sergeant nodded. You're clear to proceed. Aisha finally walked toward the doors. As she passed Reed, he leaned in and hissed. This isn't over. She stopped. Turned. It never was, she said. She stepped inside. Behind her, the sergeant spoke again. Officer Reed, he said. We need to talk. The doors slid shut, and the investigation began. Cliffhanger. The conference room was colder than Aisha expected. Not physically. Emotionally. Grey walls. Long table. Fluorescent lights that hummed softly, like they were nervous too. A digital clock blinked red above the door. 9:12 p.m. She placed her tote on the floor and sat straight-backed, hands folded. Around the table, people avoided her eyes. Compliance officers. Hospital counsel. A representative from security. And one empty chair. The door opened. Officer Reed walked in. He did not look at her. He took the seat across the table and crossed his arms. Let's get this over with, he said. The hospital counsel cleared her throat. This is a preliminary review, Officer Reed. Of what? Reed replied. I did my job. Aisha stayed quiet. The compliance officer spoke next. We received multiple complaints regarding your conduct outside the hospital tonight. Complaints from who? Reed asked. Bystanders with phones. One complaint, the officer said carefully, is from the chair of our ethics review board. Reed finally looked at Aisha. You planned this, he said. Aisha felt the room tighten. I planned to go to work, she replied. You knew pulling rank would cause trouble. I didn't pull rank, she said. I named responsibility. Reed laughed, short and sharp. Same thing. The counsel slid a tablet across the table. We also have footage. Reed leaned forward. From where? Hospital security, she said. Exterior cameras. Audio included. Aisha's stomach clenched. Not fear. Memory. The video played. Her own voice filled the room. Calm. Controlled. Then his. Why are you nervous? People like you rush away. You want to make this difficult. Reed shifted in his chair. The compliance officer paused the video. Officer Reed, can you explain why you blocked hospital access for 17 minutes? I was ensuring safety. Safety from what? The officer asked. Reed hesitated. Suspicious behavior. What behavior? The counsel pressed. She was evasive. The video resumed. Am I being detained? You're being delayed. The room went quiet. That distinction, the compliance officer said slowly, is important. Reed's jaw flexed. She challenged me. Aisha felt her pulse rise. She leaned forward. I asked questions, she said. That is not a threat. Reed pointed at her. That tone. Right there. That's what I'm talking about. The counsel's voice sharpened. Officer Reed, please don't address her directly. He scoffed. Of course. The compliance officer folded his hands. This isn't about attitude. It's about authority. Reed leaned back. So what now? You suspend me because someone felt uncomfortable. Aisha met his eyes. I felt endangered. The word landed heavy. Reed opened his mouth, then closed it. The counsel tapped the tablet. There's more. Another clip played. The moment his hand hovered near his belt. The way he leaned into her space. A nurse's voice in the background. She works here. Reed shook his head. Context matters. It does, Aisha said. That's why records exist. She slid a folder across the table. What's that? Reed asked. Prior complaints, she replied. Public records. Similar stops. Similar language. The compliance officer opened it. His brow furrowed. 1, he said. 2, 3. Reed stiffened. Those were cleared. Procedurally, Aisha said. Not ethically. Silence pressed down. The compliance officer closed the folder. Officer Reed, we're escalating this to an external review. Reed stood abruptly. This is a setup. The counsel remained calm. This is policy. Reed's eyes burned. You think this ends here? Aisha rose slowly. No, she said. I think it begins. Reed stared at her, breathing hard. The compliance officer spoke again. Officer Reed, pending review, you are not permitted on hospital grounds. Reed laughed, hollow. You don't have that power. The counsel slid another document forward. We do. Reed froze. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. 9:41 p.m. Reed grabbed his jacket. I'll be hearing from my union. The door slammed behind him. Aisha exhaled. The compliance officer looked at her. Are you okay? She thought of the lights. The crowd. The hand near the belt. Yes, she said. Then, after a beat, no. The officer nodded. We'll document everything. Aisha gathered her bag. As she stood to leave, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. This is internal affairs, a voice said. We need to speak with you tonight. Aisha closed her eyes. Of course, she said, and felt the weight of what was still coming. Cliffhanger. The interview room was smaller. No windows. One table. 2 chairs. A recorder placed carefully between them, red light blinking. Aisha sat with her hands folded, spine straight. Across from her, the internal affairs investigator adjusted his glasses. For the record, he said, state your name and position. Aisha Brown, she replied. Chair of the Memorial Hospital Ethics Review Board. Registered nurse. He nodded. And tonight, you were stopped by Officer Reed outside your workplace. Yes. Can you describe how it began? She inhaled slowly. He assumed I didn't belong. The investigator's pen paused. Based on what? She chose her words carefully. Nothing I did. He let the silence stretch. A tactic. She'd used it herself. Walk me through the moment you felt unsafe, he said. Aisha's throat tightened. She didn't rush. When he blocked the entrance, she said. When his hand moved toward his belt. When he controlled time instead of safety. The investigator glanced at the recorder. That's a serious claim. So is carrying a weapon, she replied. He nodded once. We've reviewed preliminary footage. Her heart thudded. And? It contradicts his report. A quiet relief washed through her. Not joy. Validation. What did he write? She asked. The investigator sighed. That you were aggressive. Uncooperative. Verbally confrontational. Aisha almost laughed. He used those words, she asked. Yes. She leaned back. Then he's been practicing. The investigator raised an eyebrow. You're aware of prior complaints. I reviewed public records after tonight, she said. Patterns matter. They do, he agreed. Especially when they repeat. He slid a printed document across the table. Emails. Screenshots. Comments from bystanders. One clip already had thousands of views. Someone posted the video, he said. It's spreading. Aisha's stomach dropped. My face. Yes. Her first thought wasn't reputation. It was safety. Are the comments bad? She asked. They are mixed, he replied. Supportive. Angry. Some hostile. She nodded. She'd expected that. Officer Reed has been placed on administrative leave, the investigator continued. Pending review. Aisha closed her eyes briefly. That doesn't mean justice, she said. No, he agreed. It means attention. The door opened quietly. Another investigator stepped in and whispered something. The man across from Aisha stiffened. What? She asked. He looked at her carefully. The video reached local media. Her chest tightened. Already? Within the hour, he said. And there's more. He hesitated. Say it. The department released a statement, he said, defending the stop. A flash of anger burned through her calm. Even with the footage. Yes. She leaned forward. So they are choosing him. For now, he said. Institutions protect themselves first. She nodded. She knew that rule well. What do you need from me? She asked. Your consent, he said. To expand the investigation beyond this incident. She didn't hesitate. You have it. He met her eyes. This will get harder. I know. There will be pressure, he said. Subtle and direct. I felt worse, she replied. He reached out and turned off the recorder. This isn't official, he said quietly. But you did the right thing. Her eyes burned. Doing the right thing always costs something, she said. He stood. We'll be in touch. Aisha stepped out into the hallway. Bright lights. White walls. The hum of machines. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. They're talking about you on Channel 7. She stared at the screen. Another text followed. The officer has a history. Aisha leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Across the hallway, a TV flickered on. Her face filled the screen. Hospital nurse accuses officer of misconduct. She watched herself stand under the lights. Calm. Still. The anchor's voice droned on. This is bigger than me now, she whispered. And somewhere, Officer Reed was watching too. Cliffhanger. The waiting room television stayed on all night. Aisha tried not to look at it, but the sound crawled into everything. The anchor's voice. The looping footage. Her own face frozen under harsh light. She sat with a paper cup of cold coffee in her hands. Around her, nurses moved with quiet purpose. Patients slept. Machines beeped steadily. Life went on, even when something broke. A coworker sat beside her. Marcus. Respiratory therapist. He didn't speak at first. They are saying his body cam malfunctioned, he said finally. Aisha closed her eyes. Of course it did. They are also saying you escalated. She opened them again. Of course I did. Marcus shook his head. I was there. I saw it. So were others. That doesn't always matter. She knew. Her phone buzzed again. A voicemail this time. Aisha Brown, a man's voice said. This is Lieutenant Harris with the police department. We need to discuss your public statements. Public statements. She hadn't said a word. She deleted the message. An email followed. Then another. Requests. Invitations. Warnings dressed up as concern. Be careful. This could affect your career. Think about how this looks. The pressure didn't shout. It whispered. At 3:14 a.m., the hospital CEO called an emergency meeting. Aisha sat at the long table again. Different room. Same tension. We support you, the CEO said carefully. But this has become complicated. Aisha folded her hands. Justice usually does. A lawyer cleared his throat. There may be backlash. There already is, Aisha replied. Another executive leaned forward. The police union is upset. Aisha looked at him. That's not my responsibility. Silence. The CEO sighed. We need to protect the hospital. So do I, Aisha said. That's literally my job. The words landed heavier than she intended. The lawyer spoke again. If this goes federal, we lose control. Aisha met his gaze. You were never supposed to have it. The room went still. At dawn, news broke again. Another woman came forward. Then another. Different city. Same officer. Same language. Same pause before the hand went to the belt. The story changed shape. It wasn't about Aisha anymore. It was about pattern. Outside the hospital, protesters gathered. Small at first. Then louder. Accountability. Justice. We believe her. Aisha watched from an upper window. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes tired but steady. Her phone rang. Internal Affairs. We've suspended Officer Reed without pay, the investigator said. Pending formal charges. Aisha exhaled slowly. Thank you. There's more, he added. The department chief is stepping down. Her hand trembled. Are you okay? He asked. No, she said honestly. But I'm still here. She hung up and leaned against the glass. Below, someone held a sign with her name on it. She didn't smile. That night, alone in her car, she finally cried. Not loud, not long, just enough to let the weight shift. When she looked up, her phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. This isn't over. Aisha stared at it, then deleted it. Because for the first time, she knew something had changed. Even if it hurt, even if it lasted. Cliffhanger. The room was full. Not crowded. Full. Every seat at the long table was taken. Hospital leadership. Legal counsel. Community representatives. 2 empty chairs marked police liaison and union observer. They arrived late. Aisha stood at the head of the table, fingers resting lightly on the wood. The seal of the Ethics Review Board was mounted on the wall behind her. She had walked past it 1,000 times. Today, it felt heavier. We're on the record, she said. Her voice was steady. This session concerns institutional conduct and ethical violations. A camera blinked red in the corner. The police liaison cleared his throat. With respect, this board doesn't have jurisdiction. It does, Aisha replied. When hospital access, patient safety, and staff rights are compromised. The union observer shifted. You're emotional. That compromises objectivity. Aisha met his gaze. Emotion didn't detain me. Authority did. A murmur moved through the room. She clicked the remote. The screen lit up. A timeline appeared. Dates. Locations. Names redacted. Officer Reed has been involved in 12 civilian stops near medical facilities, she said. 7 involved black staff or patients. The liaison leaned forward. Correlation isn't proof. Patterns are, Aisha replied. She played the clips. Short. Controlled. The same phrases. The same pauses. The same posture. Hands near the belt. Bodies blocking exits. Time used as a weapon. Aisha felt her throat tighten, but she kept going. This board exists, she said, because harm doesn't always leave bruises. Silence held. A community representative spoke up. What are you recommending? Aisha inhaled. Immediate termination pending charges. Mandatory bias review for officers assigned to hospital zones. And an independent oversight agreement. The union observer scoffed. That's extreme. Aisha looked at him. So was 17 minutes. The lawyer whispered urgently to the liaison. He nodded, tight-lipped. After a long pause, the board chair spoke. All in favor. Hands rose. One by one. Steady. Unafraid. The chair nodded. Motion passes. Aisha felt something inside her chest release. Not relief. Completion. Outside, cameras waited. She stepped to the podium. Flashbulbs popped. Questions flew. Do you feel vindicated? Are you afraid of retaliation? What message does this send? Aisha chose one answer. This isn't about me, she said. It's about what happens when silence stops. That night, the headline changed. Hospital Ethics Board triggers police accountability review. Aisha turned off the TV. She sat alone in her apartment, the quiet loud around her. Her phone buzzed once more. An email. Officer Reed charged with misconduct and civil rights violations. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow, there would be more hearings. More scrutiny. More cost. But tonight, the system had spoken back. And for once, it listened. Cliffhanger. The hospital entrance looked the same. Glass doors. Bright lights. People moving in and out with purpose. But Aisha felt the difference the moment she stepped onto the pavement. No patrol car. No blocked path. No voice telling her to stop. She paused anyway. Not out of fear. Out of memory. Inside, a few staff members nodded at her. Some smiled. Others looked away, unsure what to say. Trauma didn't vanish just because justice showed up late. In the break room, Marcus handed her a cup of coffee. Stronger stuff today, he said. She almost laughed. Good. The news cycle had moved on, the way it always did. A new scandal. A new face. But some things remained. Officer Reed had been fired. Charges pending. His name now attached to words like pattern and abuse instead of service. The department announced reforms. Training. Oversight. Committees. Aisha knew better than to call that an ending. It was a beginning. She sat alone later in the ethics board office, reviewing reports. Complaints came in differently now. More precise. Less afraid. One message stopped her. Because you spoke, I did too. She leaned back in her chair, breath catching. That night, as she walked to her car, a young nurse slowed beside her. I saw what happened, the nurse said. I just wanted to say, thank you. Aisha nodded. Be careful, she said gently. And don't stay quiet if you don't have to. The nurse smiled and walked away. At home, Aisha stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. She studied her face, the lines under her eyes, the steadiness that had cost something. She touched her badge, resting on the counter. It wasn't a shield. It never had been. But now, it meant something different. Her phone buzzed one last time. An alert. Federal oversight approved. She exhaled slowly. Outside, sirens passed in the distance. She didn't flinch. She turned off the light and sat in the quiet. Justice hadn't erased the fear. It had just made room for courage to stand beside it. And tomorrow, she would walk through those doors again. Not untouched, but unbroken.